Chelsea, I'm so excited to have you on the 4Q podcast today. So welcome.
Thank you so much. It's exciting to be here.
I'm excited to have you because I know we did an Instagram live recently and I loved it. It's always nice when you can click and connect with other health professionals who just kind of get it. So I definitely instantly felt that with you.
It's always good to collaborate with other women that are just sharing the message.
Yeah, exactly. And just showing up. I think sometimes I work with a lot of health professionals and it can be scary to show up fully. But it's so needed. So, I'm always sort of cheering us all on. So, look, let's get into that a little bit more about who you are for those of you who don't know. So, again, the first R of our 4R formula is reflecting, and that is who you are. So, Chelsea, for anyone who doesn't know who you are, can you give us a bit of a background? Who are you and what do you do?
I like to say that I'm a little bit of a change maker when it comes to perception of women's health, especially in a later age. I am a perimenopause coach. I'm really enthusiastic about holistic health. I'm a yoga teacher, personal trainer, and meditation guide. But the main thing is I empower women on this journey through perimenopause to support them to get back to feeling like themselves again, get back to their identity and reconnect to themselves.
Amazing. And while we're on that, before anybody just switches this off and goes, oh, menopause, that's not for me, can you describe actually what perimenopause is? Because I remember like going through some of your content on Instagram and having kind of a minor freak out and going, do I have perimenopause? Like, is this what this is? Like, so can you explain to those who've never heard the term? Because to be honest, I've only really heard that term in the last year. Can you explain a bit more when that is and when it can, as early as it can start?
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a big part of my work, right? Is just sharing the knowledge around what perimenopause is, because sadly, as women, we're never really given that education. We're never really given that support. I think when we're in school, we have like one day of sex ed where we learn about protection and periods and stuff, but we're never really told what perimenopause or menopause is. I think back to before I was perimenopausal, I just thought menopause was hot flushes and weight gain. That's all I knew of it, right? And I thought it was just an old ladies thing. I started perimenopause when I was 29. Now that's really early and it's not super common, but the average range to start perimenopause is around 43 now in Australia. So it is getting younger. And a lot of women, when they start getting the symptoms, are quite surprised by that because they think, I'm not old enough for this. And some of the symptoms that can come along with that are things that we might not necessarily associate with perimenopause. Things like fatigue, sleep loss, brain fog, anxiety, depression, emotional eating, weight gain, achy joints, dry skin, hair loss. There's so many different things that can come with it. And that's not to say that those symptoms alone are perimenopause, but putting the whole picture together can give you an understanding of what's going on in your body, especially when you're noticing, these changes for yourself and changes in your period to kind of paint the picture of where you are at this stage in your life.
Yeah, amazing. But today we're not talking so much about perimenopause. We're actually talking a bit more about you and your story and who you are as a business owner. So again, before we get to our next question, we know who you are as a business owner, but tell us a bit about who you are outside of that. What are you doing in the background?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that my business is such a big reflection of who I am in terms of how much I care about health and being active and fitness and that sort of thing. But I think that comes into my everyday in lots of different ways. I've always been really active. I used to be a dancer, so you'll find me being the first one to start a dance floor whenever we're at the pub or something like that. I travel a lot. I've always loved to travel. Anyone who knows me knows they can come to me for travel advice and that sort of thing. But in anything I do, it's always movement and being active because I think that's what really lights me up.
Oh, amazing, amazing. And I'm always in awe, I feel like I can pick it when someone's a dancer just because of the way they hold themselves is just it's almost like you can tell and I think I saw a video the other day of Greta, the Barbie movie director talking about that a lot of the extras on set were dancers because she wanted them to hold themselves in that very posturized way.
I would
So
believe that, yeah.
yeah, so interesting. So look, let's get into it. So the second R that we're going to hit today is about redefine, and this is definitely, a defining or pivotal moment in your life that redefined new perspective or meaning for you in your life. So if you feel comfortable, can you tell us about maybe a hard moment that really changed your perspective on things for you?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a huge story that can come along with this, but
Mm,
the reason for me being so passionate about health is because of the health struggles that I've had. Which obviously perimenopause at the age of 29 is one of them. Coming with that is infertility, premature ovarian insufficiency, so not being able to have my own kids. And those were big moments in themselves. But I think before that is what really changed my perspective on my health and what was important in life. And so I started struggling with my health when I was still in high school, dealing with a lot of gut issues, a lot of unsolved problems, always at the doctor trying to figure out what's going on. I had IBS, which is pretty common. I then also developed endometriosis, which is about 1 in 10 women now have as well. And
mm,
trauma to my pelvis, which then also led to chronic pelvic pain. And when I say chronic pelvic pain, what I mean by that is like you imagine if like you're getting a needle in your arm, right, and you tense against that, and your bicep flexes, and you imagine walking around with that flexed muscle all day, how tired and sore it would get. You've probably
mm,
experienced DOMS from going to the gym before and working out a muscle. It's like that is the pain in my pelvis all of the time. And
mm.
so that chronic pelvic pain took a long time to get that diagnosis, and also a long time to kind of understand what that meant. And at the time I was a personal trainer, but the pain meant that I could no longer really do anything that used my core, which was
Mm,
everything. Like walking and, doing squats or dancing, all of those things that I love to do that bring me joy. I found that I couldn't do them at all anymore. Even just sitting in my chair at my desk as a travel agent was a lot of pressure on my core and quite painful. So that went on for a while, but the biggest moment for me within that was I was actually living in Kenya at the time, volunteering there, doing a lot of great work. But I was experiencing so much pain that I spent days in bed, in agony and not being able to help the people I was there to help. um, I got so bad that I ended up calling the hotel manager because I didn't really have anybody else there I knew, and he took me to hospital. So I went to hospital in Kenya, which was frightening. It's just
mm,
in a country that they don't speak your language. The healthcare is, not the standard that I was used to. Trying to communicate with them and understand what was going on and not really getting any answers, which was something I was kind of used to anyway. But they decided that they thought I had appendicitis and wanted to do surgery and take my appendix out, which I did not feel comfortable doing. So I took the risk instead of getting on the plane, which, if anyone's had appendicitis, knows they can't travel with that.
mm.
The risk of your appendix bursting, which could have been catastrophe. But yeah, I came home and I went to live with my sister because I didn't have anywhere to come home to. I wasn't meant to be coming home yet. But I from there spent about, I think it was about 4 months in bed. So I couldn't work, I couldn't exercise, I couldn't do anything for myself. And as hard as that was on my physical body, and the pain that I was in, the biggest impact it had for me was more on my mindset. And I fell into depression. I had a really bad relationship with myself. I think that because I was someone who cared so much about health and I ate right and I exercised, and anyone who's had IBS knows the restrictions that you have to take with your diet. So as much as I felt like I was doing all of the right things, it almost
Mm.
felt like my body was betraying me. And so my relationship with myself really suffered. I hated my body. I was so
Mm.
frustrated with it. And so I was in a really dark place at that time, spending so much time in bed, with, like your clients. I know that you talk a lot about mental health and anxiety, and there's this cycle, when you're in a bad place of not really wanting to do anything for yourself either, even though you know what you could be doing and what could help. So I think that would be probably the hardest thing that I have one of the hardest things that I have been through, that taught me a lot.
Mm.
And it really forced me to work on my relationship with myself and really listen to myself.
Yeah, yeah. And thank you for sharing, because again, there was just so many things there. And I guess a really important point that you mention is, again, for anyone listening who maybe is struggling with anxiety or burnout, or maybe the burnout's seeping into depression now, adrenal fatigue, sometimes you cannot think your way out of a feeling or a state. Like, they're definitely, again, and it's ironic, but it's almost like you have to shock your body or do something with your body, even though the last thing you want to do is with your body. And so that's really interesting. So look, you've explained to us, like, that incredible story. I, like, don't even know how to pick that apart, because there were so many elements to that. But how did you recover from that? Because obviously things went upward after that. And look, you're your own business owner, and you're thriving physically now, from what I can see anyway. So can you tell us, how did you go from there, and what was the tools that you used to redesign your life and get back on track after that?
Yeah, I think that, my history of health issues kind of helped me in a way that I had learnt that I needed to do my own research, and I needed to see lots of different people. But first, actually getting to that point where I cared enough to do that for myself, it was actually something I think a psychologist recommended to me originally, but it was meditation for me that got me out of that place, to start off with, and meditation that I still use all the time. And it was self-love, which when I say self-love, at first, when they mentioned it to me, I was calling bullshit, but
Mhm.
for me,
It
it was like,
sounds so wishy-washy. Just love
yeah,
yourself enough, right? Like,
corny.
self-love.
And I was like, how is that going to help? And questioning it. And it took me a while to kind of give in, but it was a meditation around self-love that I found that really broke me in a way. And I felt like I had to break to kind of put myself together. It was actually coming to the point of telling myself, I love you. And like I said before, I was at a point where I hated my body. So actually being able to turn around and say, I love you, just I burst into tears because I
Mm.
couldn't say it. I couldn't say it honestly. I thought, I hate you. So for me to get to a point where actually I'm showing kindness and understanding to my body and nurturing it and looking after it and trying to really listen instead was kind of that first step of, okay, I want to love you. I want to look after you. I want to help you with what's going on. And then thinking, okay, what can I do for myself? What can I do that brings me joy? Or what did I used to like doing? And for me, it was exercise, right? And I couldn't do a lot of exercise. So I had to think of ways to get back into that without causing myself more pain. And that's when I found,
Mm.
which is a big part of what I do now. And being the person I was at the time, I was so used to being a performer, right? Being a dancer and being good at everything in terms of movement. And so I was terrified of going to a yoga class. I would not go to a yoga class. So I only did yoga online from home, and I would literally roll out of bed in my PJs and do it in my room. And honestly, for the first month, I think I cried every time I did a yoga practice
Mm.
because it was so hard. I would stop it a minute in because of the pain that I was feeling, or the message in my mind telling me that I couldn't do it or this isn't going to work. It really took me a long time, but it was a way for me to come back to my body to find ways to move that felt good, to show myself some love and some kindness and understanding. And I think that's really now why when I teach a yoga practice, I try to include a lot of that self-connection of really understanding what is going on in your body right now, rather than yoga being a performance. I found that I wanted to get back to my physical strength. And so I used a lot of my knowledge of personal training to incorporate that isolated muscle recruitment and the strength elements to a yoga practice in a way that worked for me in my body. So what I was doing was very different to what was on the videos and that sort of thing. But I think that's
Mm.
really helped me now to help others within their yoga practice.
Yeah, incredible. And for those of you who don't know, my business, Savasana Collective or Shavasana Collective, Savasana is actually one of the final poses in yoga. It's corpse
Mhm.
pose. It's literally lying on the ground, like as a corpse. But
Everybody's favorite.
or some people's least favorite because you're like, okay, I'd rather be moving than sit alone with my thoughts.
Yeah.
Awful. Don't want that. But I think you've touched on a couple of things here. I think one is that the body keeps score. And so, again, I was saying, like, I've watched a few yoga practitioners, seasoned yoga practitioners who've been doing it for, decades, and the ones in India, like the OGs or whatever. And they will say that just from watching someone do yoga, they know psychologically what they've been through because certain muscles are holding when you've been through something, or certain muscles are tense. And any body practitioner listening, whether you're a physio or a chiro or a masseuse or whatever, you you all know that as soon as you move something in somebody's body, they'll be on the table just crying, not from the pain, but like you've let something go, that the unspeakable. And so, again, in my work, I really encourage people, like, it's a mind body practice. There are things in therapy that I shift in you, and that will come out in your body as well. So I think that that's something I wanted to touch on. But the second thing, if it's okay with you to share, is that would have taken an incredible amount of mental strength, like you're saying, to roll out of bed and a minute in be in so much pain, sitting there crying. How do what is it about you, or what do you think was able to get you through that to not give up? Because again, when we're in the wraps of burnout, anxiety, even perimenopause, it can feel like that, and it can be really easy to feel like giving up. What do you think was the difference for you?
Yeah, I think, well, I want to reflect on your comment before first, if that's okay.
Yeah, go for it.
Um, I love that, yes, the body keeps the score, and that within any yoga practice, it is an insight as to what someone has been through. But that, I think, that can be some of the most rewarding part of my work, not only with the yoga and the meditation and the kinesiology. Like, I've got a team of holistic experts on that work in my
Oh,
program.
amazing.
It's this it's like this exploration that I watch my clients go on. So rather than me stepping in and say, I can see that you've been through this, or this has happened for you, it's more them kind of connecting to that and how that has impacted on them. And that is such a beautiful journey for someone to go through, especially in that stage of life when they're going through perimenopause. And it's often a time of when they're feeling like they've kind of lost their identity with all of the changes that are going on around them.
Mm,
But yeah, in terms of pulling myself out of where I was, I think it was a couple of things. And one of the things was guilt. I think because I was living at my sister's house, and so I didn't want to be a burden to anyone. It was the guilt of using money to live off, which was left to me by my father, who had passed away the year before. um it was this guilt of I'm not living my life, and that wanting to be back to myself again. So that was the other side of it, was basically I don't want to feel this way anymore. And it was that something that shifted in me that said, I want to live my life. I want to travel. I want to move. I want to dance. I want to have fun. I don't want to feel this way anymore. And so it was really only small steps, I think, that could get me out of that. And I think also at the time it was this kind of loneliness, being in bed all day and not connecting with others. And
Mm.
I think I was on Tinder at the time. And then my now partner, who
Mm.
we've been going through IVF and all that sort of thing, but at the time, he had invited me out for a date and I had to say no because of my pain and being sick. I'd had to cancel on him. And he says now that, he thought that was it, that he wasn't going to contact me ever again. But
Oh, lucky.
yeah, it was like kind of being really lonely and feeling guilty, and kind of it was a choice that I had to make to change something, to get back to feeling like myself again. And I know that choice, I can talk about it now and it sounds easy, but I know in the time when you're in the depths of it, it is really hard. And I think the choice, it took so long to come to that point, and very small steps to actually start making a difference. If you can imagine doing yoga once in the day and the whole rest of the day is in bed, and even that time in the yoga practice was maybe a minute or two, the rest of the time was crying. So it was like
Mm.
it was a really slow process to get myself back there.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, well, thank you again. Thank you for sharing, because I think that's the thing, is that for anybody who's listening, it's really important to remember, like you're saying, it's a slow process sometimes, but if nothing changes, nothing changes. And I think sometimes with some of my clients, they're not coming to me until they're at the breaking point. And wouldn't it be nice if we didn't have to wait until we're absolutely at rock bottom? Like, if rock bottom's 10 out of 10, what if we could go, look, at 7 out of 10, like, I'm burnt out. I can't imagine keep doing this. Like, if I keep doing the same thing day in, day out, where the hell am I going to be in a year from now? Like, something has got to give. And I think if anyone's out there and they're going, look, I'm not unhappy in life, but I'm not happy in life. You don't have to wait until shit hits the fan to change. If anything, learn from these stories, learn from these lessons, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's something I say to my clients often, because they often wait until they are feeling a bit down, or most people, when they come to me in perimenopause, it's a point where they're feeling a lot of symptoms, like, and it's at a point where they're desperate and they're like, I need help. Whereas if it's something that we do more often, just like if you're someone who exercises regularly, goes for a walk, looks after yourself, eating well, it's the same sort of thing when it comes to looking after your mental health, whether that is journaling or speaking to a professional. It's the same sort of thing with looking after yourself. It's all part of that self-care. And I think the most important part of your self-care is the inner work. It's the hardest part, but it's the most important part. I think for me, like, a lot of that inner work has been at a pivotal time. The journaling has always been really, really helpful for me. And so I stick to that. I've got to be disciplined to keep journaling, because I found that when I got my journal out, I was just looking for something wrong to write about, even when nothing was wrong. When it's okay to just journal whatever comes to mind and what's happening in your day and what you're grateful for, I think that kind of keeps it more consistent and helps you still to just check in and notice what's going on, because we spend so much of our time disconnected from ourselves on this kind of autopilot mode, where a lot of us are thinking about everybody else, especially the mothers out
Mm.
there, catering to everybody else's needs, rushing around, multitasking, planning everything, getting to that point of burnout without taking time to connect, to notice how your body's moving, to notice what thoughts you're having in your mind, to take the time to pause and reflect and find balance again.
Yeah, absolutely. And for anybody in my new program, the Clarity Code, that's one of the first things that we do. Is actually, there's a check-in tool that I have where you check in on the 4 key areas of health and wellness, because calling it a check-in, I think sometimes is easier than saying, here's this journal prompt as well. Because I remember in my journaling thing, I remember in primary school, it was really cool to have a journal. And I feel like every book I read was like, inside her journal, she wrote, Dear Diary. And I was like, what did I write? Dear Diary, I don't feel good, the end, right? Like, I didn't know where to start. And I think once I realized, like, I went on Pinterest and it was just suggested to me, of course, as the algorithm does, journal prompts. And it was things like, when was the time that you were the most grateful? And all of a sudden, you're like thinking about that. And then again, a follow-up question, what was it about that made you grateful? What led up to that? Like all these things, they seem like such simple questions, but again, just reflecting on that, you can do that in your current life. So yeah, for anyone out there who was like me, who was like avoidant of journaling as well, or just didn't know how to do it, just go on Pinterest and go journal prompts and just find one that I think clicks, because it's such an important part, like you're saying, to actually check in different ways, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think it really helps you to be connected and to be grounded and finding, yeah, that balance. I think the balance side of things is really important. And I think that's something that has helped me the most in terms of my perimenopause journey with all of the symptoms that I've experienced and a lot for my clients as well. It's finding that right balance for the individual because we're all so different. But for example, and this is something that I guess impacts on everyone, but stress is the biggest contributor to perimenopause symptoms, right? And,
Mm,
stress can have such an impact on your physical body, on your mind, on your sleep, on your digestion, in so many ways, on your emotions, on your relationships. And when we're not finding that balance, we can just end up in this chronic stress state where it has a toll on our nervous system and therefore a toll on our health. And so I think finding that balance in terms of the balance in the kind of exercise you do. Some people will be so worried about exercising, they'll exercise so hard when they are exercising that they're putting more stress on their body. And not actually, and they're the type of people that are also really busy in their everyday. So to me, that kind of exercise for a busy person is not helping them find balance.
mm,
It's and when I'm teaching a yoga class, there'll be times within a yoga class where I'll say, you can choose movement here or you can choose stillness, and it is up to you. And it's about that person making a choice that helps them to find balance when they've been really busy all day and they've got a monkey mind and they can't stop thinking. It's finding that stillness, and that stillness that's sometimes really uncomfortable to be in, but just accepting that and breathing through it so that your nervous system can learn that it's okay to be still and not to always be busy and productive.
exactly. Be in Shavasana. Right? Be
Uh,
in Savasana. So look, like our final question is really about you in the now. So, it's realigning, like after going through all of this, what is life like now? And, how do you stay on track? What are the things that when you notice that maybe you're slipping out, like we all do, or we're falling into old habits, or maybe we're just having a bad week, month, whatever? What are things that you do now to kind of help you keep back on track?
yeah, I think for me it is that balance, but it's being disciplined with that balance because I'm someone who loves to be busy. I love my work and I will happily work all day and all night because I get on a roll, I get in this rhythm and I'm helping people and I'm talking to people and I just love it. But if I don't give myself a day off, if I don't take time to find that balance and slow down, then I do get to burnout. And it's like, there was something I was reading the other day that said, if you don't give yourself a day off, your body will choose your day off.
Mm,
It is, it's so true. But yeah, I think for me, it is finding little moments throughout my day to stop and to do something for myself. Because I think one of the biggest things that a lot of women struggle with is prioritizing themselves, giving themselves time to look after themselves without feeling guilty. It's, and it's something that's really overlooked, I think, because we think of self-care as like taking a bubble bath. But like I said, self-care is often a lot of inner work. And so for me, I have to question myself when I am making excuses, when I'm looking at my to-do list and going, I've got too much to do to go for a walk. I've got too much to do to stop and have lunch for an hour. When I'm my busiest, I actually give myself a 2-hour lunch break because I know that I need that time. I'm often teaching yoga classes really early in the morning, and then I'm doing coaching calls with my clients late in the evening because that's what works best for them
Mm.
after work. So I have to give myself 2 hours in the middle of the day to keep that balance where I mindfully eat my lunch and maybe do some meditation or some journaling. For me, it's about keeping that balance. I have a list here on my wall of my self-care list is what I call it, and it's got about 20 to 30 different things on there that I will choose at least one thing a day to do for myself. And it can be anything from obviously yoga and meditation and exercise I love, but it can also be things like catching up with a friend or going on a date night or taking a nap or reading a book or dancing or having a really healthy meal, anything like that that I think is going to really help keep the balance. And staying on top of my health is really important. Like I said, I've got a team of experts in my perimenopause program on my team, like a nutritionist, a naturopath, kinesiologist, breathwork coach, mindset coaches. And the reason I have those people there is because I've used them myself. I found that with any health issues I had coming up, and especially into perimenopause, that it took a really holistic approach. There was never kind of one thing or one way that was going to fix everything. It was a balance
Mm.
of everything, looking after yourself from lots of different points. And, that's going to change every day and depending on what's going on for you. But that's why I've kind of taken all of that and put it into one place for other ladies.
Yeah, exactly. And we have that same ethos for sure. And I think there's like a ancient quote about like the monks used to have about meditation, and it was something along the lines of those who are too busy to meditate need to meditate twice as long. And it's exactly what you're saying, right? It's like it's a sign that you just need to stop and slow down and find balance, right? And prioritize that too. So Chelsea, this has been an amazing chat. I'm sure anyone listening is going to have so much words of like wisdom coming from you, and just being able to relate to your story in so many different ways, and also inspired by your story too, because I'm feeling very inspired right now. Where can people find you if they want to connect with you, if they want to find you? Where are you at?
Yeah, my business is called Thrive Yoga and Fitness. So you can find me on Instagram under that, or my website, Thrive Yoga and Fitness as well. So yeah, you can jump on there. There's a couple of freebies on there, free yoga class, free webinar to learn a little bit more about perimenopause, and even a free consultation. So if you are someone who's listening and you feel like you're experiencing some of the symptoms of perimenopause, or you are struggling with it at the moment, and you want to get a little bit more clarity around why you're feeling that way, what kind of changes you can make to start to feel better, I do a free consultation to help you kind of put some things in place.
Incredible. Well, thank you so much, Chelsea. This has been such a pleasure. And of course, for anybody listening, I will have all of Chelsea's details in the show notes. So thank you again. And for anyone listening, I will see you in the next episode of the 4Q podcast.
Welcome to the 4Q podcast. My name is Sheena Shui. I have a Bachelor of Psychology, Masters of Counselling, and Masters of Social Work. My aim is to normalise rather than pathologise life. And in this podcast, we talk all things therapy, women's mental health, leadership, and business. So if you're ready to learn some tips, tricks, and hear some amazing stories to really amplify your life and your business, let's get into it. Welcome again to the 4Q podcast.